Hi, and welcome back. Matrix mixers have been popular lately, and quite a few companies made interesting versions with unique features. But what makes the core concept so interesting and useful? Today, we're going to take a closer look. In this video, I'll quickly explain what matrix mixers are and how they work. And then I'll dive into 4 interesting ways to use them. If you'd like to support this video series, or you want to get access to the PDF sheets of the illustrations I use in this and many of my other videos, have a look at my Patreon. But now, let's dive right in. In this video, I use the Doepfer A-138m, but all matrix mixers follow the same simple concept. They might look a bit daunting with this grid of unlabeled knobs, but in the core they are very simple mixers. If I cover this side up, you will see a simple 4-to-1 mixer. There are 4 inputs on this side here, 4 knobs to set how much of each of the incoming signals is present in a final mix, and of course a single mix output here at the bottom. The most simple way of looking at this matrix mixer is as 4 individual mixers. However, all mixers use the same inputs. Each input is horizontally connected to its row of paths, so you can use each input signal in each of the 4 unique output mixes. In the next chapter, I will show a few ideas for more creative setups, but it's good to realize a matrix mixer, when not used in funky ways, is just a useful mixer. Again, you can use it as a simple 4-to-1 mixer, a 3-to-1 mixer and a single attenuator, or 2 simple 2-to-1 mixers. But a more creative mixing setup, for example, would be to use the first mixer as a simple 4-to-1 mixer, and at the same time use a mix of 2 of the inputs to a second location and use 2 other channels as attenuators on single sources. The matrix mixer is a very flexible mixing console that can work in anything from simple utility to creative signal flow setups. One of my favorite things to do with a matrix mixer is use it to distribute modulation sources in a synth or drone voice. Here's an example with a simple drone voice, made with a wavetable oscillator, wavefolder and filter. As inputs for the matrix mixer, you want a couple of different modulation sources to divide over the drone voice. For example, a fast smooth random voltage, a slow LFO, and a very slow smooth random voltage. To add texture and grid to different places, it can work well to make a copy of the output of the oscillator and use that as a modulation source as well. The outputs of the matrix mixer are sent to modulate different parameters in the voice. In this case, the oscillator's FM and waveshape input, the wavefolder, and the filter's cutoff. This gives you great ways to sculpt the voice. But this trick can work on melodic synth voices as well. Here you see the same setup made with a wavetable oscillator, wavefolder and filter. And the outputs of the matrix mixer are sent to the same destinations. But this time the oscillator is sequenced. And the sequencer is triggering an envelope used as the first input of the matrix mixer. The second, third and fourth input are used in the same way, with an LFO, smooth random voltage, and copy of the oscillator. This gives you a lot of ways to add complexity and dirt to the simple voice and sculpt it over time. Similar to distributing modulation, a matrix mixer can be used to distribute audio to different destinations. For example, to create complex effect sense in an entire track. Here, a kick is sent into the first input of the matrix mixer. The second has some triggered drum samples, and the third and fourth have an entire synth voice each, complete with a bit of modulation to keep it interesting. In order to use the first vertical raw of the matrix mixer as the clean volume control for each of the parts, the first output is sent directly to an outboard mixer. The other outputs pass through fully wet effects, for example a fast delay, a stereo granular processor, and a stereo reverb. This setup gives you the possibility to sculpt entire transitions or tracks. But you can also integrate the mixer deeper into your patch. For example, by sending 4 different tuned raw oscillators into the mixer. The first input is sent to a filter, modulated with a looping envelope to create pulsating sounds. The second output is sent to a delay and then a filter, modulated with a smooth random voltage. And to keep it simple, just like in the last patch, the third and fourth output are used with a fully wet stereo granular processor and reverb. Again, this is great for sculpting sounds over time during a recording or performance. Another fun way to use a matrix mixer is as the core of a sequencer. You need a few other tools to make it work, but it's very customizable. Let's start simple and use one vertical raw of the mixer. The output goes to a quantizer, tuning the oscillator in a simple voice. The idea is to send each of the inputs of the matrix mixer a steady high offset voltage. But instead of sending them all at the same time, you want to create a sequence, moved forward by a clock. First you need the first input to be high, then the second, the third, the fourth, then back to the first, the second, and so on. This way you can use each of the 4 knobs on the mixer to set the pitch of your sequence. One way to do this is with a quad sequential switch. You can send a single high voltage to its input, connect the 4 outputs to each of the inputs on the matrix mixer, and then just use a clock to cycle through the outputs of the switch. But you can also use a sequencer, as long as it has individual trigger or gate outputs for at least 4 steps. Then connect the clock to the quantizer's trigger input and have the clock trigger an envelope as well to add some motion to the voice. To be fair, this can be done with every simple mixer. What's interesting is that with a matrix mixer, you can add more complexity at the end to increase the length of the sequence. For example, again, you can use a quad sequential switch to increase the step length all the way to 16. All you need is a clock divider that cycles through the switch every 4 steps. So you go through 1 raw voltages at a time. I actually don't have a quad switch, but I often use 2 simple crossfaders with gates from the divider to create 2 8-step sequencers. These can be used on different voices, but also as modulation sources, for example on the filter. But you can keep customizing this setup and give it unique and less common features. For example, you can add random triggers to reset the sequencer to vary the pattern length, or send random voltages through a VCA and then into the matrix mixer to add 1 step of random node to the sequence. Just use the 4th step to open the VCA and allow the random voltage through on that step. Other tools can add a lot of fun to this idea. For example, I use 2 gatos to create the 4-step gate pattern, but these modules can be modulated to create a lot of pattern variations. The last concept I want to share is a feedback patch, because the matrix mixer is a great tool for this. For example, take a simple drone voice made with a single oscillator and filter into the first input. Modulate the filter slightly with a simple LFO to add a bit of dynamics. Then use the last output as the main output to listen to. To add creative feedback, you can use each of the remaining outputs. Send the signal through a fully wet effect, like a reverb, and then back into the matrix mixer. The other effects used in this patch are a granular processor and a delay. Now, the top row functions as an effect send. The last vertical row lets you listen to each of the clean input signals. And the other knobs can be used to set feedback amount and cross-feeding. think I'll come back to feedback patches in the future. But I hope all this gives you some ideas for matrix mixers. If you have other fun ideas, let me know about them in the comments. If you like to browse through my modular videos, have a look at these playlists, and smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching and see you next time.